What is sci-fi, and what does it mean to the two of you?
Huh. Wow, that's an interesting question. That's a big question. Well, should I take it, Elaine? Because I'm the science fiction geek. Well, science fiction, it's a wonderful playground because it allows us to comment on our world, but in a way that makes it much more universal. For instance, when Rod Serling came up with Twilight Zone, he was censored by the networks and the sponsors in terms of saying anything he wanted to say about politics or race or social issues of the day. So he created Twilight Zone so he could comment on those things without the censors removing it. And as a result, those Twilight Zone episodes are as timely now in the Trump era as they ever were when he was writing and Eisenhower was president or Kennedy was president. So I love the fact that science fiction allows me to reach an audience of millions of people around the world, and the work lasts decades and actually centuries ultimately.
And it also seems to inspire people because there are so many things that were jumped off from things like Star Trek, where geek kids grew up to be geek scientists, and they actually jumped in and they made it real. So it really is inspirational. And one thing that I really like about science fiction is it's the same thing with stories in small towns or westerns. It's where a lot of the complexity of modern life is stripped away, and we can really focus on moral and emotional issues in a much clearer way.
Yes, yeah. And also, if you kill a character, you can bring them back because you can clone them or whatever.
I'm particularly good at that, yes.
Have their head in a tank with nutrients or whatever. It's really fun.
Do you remember the first time the two of you were exposed to the first sort of sci-fi story and where you were, how old you were in life?
Well, between the two of us, I'm the real science fiction geek. I mean, Elaine was reading Dostoevsky when she was a kid and Tolstoy.
But I wanted a robot.
You wanted a robot toy, yeah, exactly. But my first experience with science fiction, when I was a kid, I was reading comic books from as early as I can remember. My first favorite book was Farmer in the Sky by Robert Heinlein when I was 7. I just grew up in the genres. Twilight Zone, Star Trek, Outer Limits, those are the 3 shows that made me want to be a writer. And as soon as I was a teenager, I started going to science fiction conventions and meeting those writers, the writers who'd written for those shows, Harlan Ellison, D.C. Fontana, David Gerrold, Theodore Sturgeon, Richard Matheson, George Clayton Johnson, Ray Bradbury, and many of them became friends and mentors. And so I definitely knew where home was for me.
And I was more brought up on the social issues than some of the older writers, like 1984 and H.G. Wells, where they were really exploring social issues. So rather than the newer writers, I knew the older ones, and my parents leaned strongly to the left, and so did I. And so we found their ability to explore things where people would not put up walls because it was in the future, allow them a much greater freedom to reach into people's thought processes and feelings without defensiveness.
So that's sort of some of it. I just was, when I was a kid, I was given a Christmas present of a trip to the Star Trek set. So I was there for the last episode of the original Star Trek ever shot, Turnabout Intruder. So I got to sit in the captain's chair and stand on the transporter. I remember looking up and seeing there was just a light bulb screwed into the transporter above my head, and I thought, well, gee. And I remember thinking how small, the engineering on the Star Trek set was a forced perspective, and I was thinking, gee, this is a lot smaller than it looks on television. And it was just an amazing day, really a wonderful, wonderful day, the best Christmas present ever.